I greet you in Lord's holy name. It's such a joy for us to meet together like this. We are so much thankful to God for the life He has given us and the privilege. This week we have decided to study the book of Esther. I'm excited and I'm so happy that we can start this evening. I requested dear sister Dr. Shirley. She's a busy doctor, but she attends our Bible study whenever she's free. I'm so thankful to God for her commitment. And today she will lead us in prayer that the Lord will enable us as we study the book of Esther for the next 4 days. It will be a blessing for all of us. Sister Shirley.
Let us bow our heads in prayer. Gracious Heavenly Father, we praise you and thank you, Father, for giving us this wonderful time. We thank you, Father, for giving us this wonderful opportunity to utilize this time together to study your word, Father. As we're going to meditate on the book of Esther today, Father, be with us, O Master. Help us to understand your purpose which you have given in our lives, Lord. Help us to apply whatever we study in our day-to-day lives, Father. Help us to do things according to your will, Father. Father, as we know in the book of Esther, Father, you are working in the background, Father. Even though your name is not mentioned in the book of Esther, Father, we reveal your plan. We reveal what you have done through Esther in the background, Father. Help us to understand this purpose which you have done in each and every one of our lives, Father. Father, we pray for Billy Uncle, Father. And we also thank you for the work which you have done for us, Father, to help us to study your word together, Father. Bless each and every member present in this study, Father. Be with us throughout the session. We give all glory and honor to you. In Jesus' most precious name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Sister Shirley. Dr. Shirley is from Nagarkoil. I'm really grateful to God for this real privilege of studying God's word during this lockdown period. And also, I'm so much thankful to God for your keen interest in studying God's word. That really motivates me to prepare, and I'm excited. I sincerely thank my brothers who are helping me in the technical side, and my brothers and sisters who stand with me in prayer. Some of them, the way in which they pray for this program, and the way in which they pray for one another, it's amazing. Just in the Tamil class, there was one sister who was joined. Last Friday, she informed us that, last week she informed us that her mother is not at all happy that she's attending this Bible study. And we are praying for one another and encouraging one another. I really feel that it is something, a very good fellowship I enjoy with all of you. I'm grateful to God for this real privilege. Before we go into the book of Esther, we need to look at the background, and not only book of Esther, even in other books, we need to study the history properly. And by the way, brothers and sisters, the Old Testament history is very, very important. I like my dear brother, Dr. Godwin Nicholson, the way in which he leads Old Testament made it easy. And I really wish that I will include his presentations in our WhatsApp group, so that if you're interested, even in these days, you can get to know their Old Testament overview or Old Testament survey. And when we look at this book, we see that it took place during Israel's captivity. When we studied Zephaniah, we saw that along with Jeremiah, he warned the southern kingdom that Babylonians will come and capture you. And it has happened. And after that, the Persians, they overtook the Babylonians. In the book of Daniel, we read about that history. Even in Nehemiah, Esther, we read about these histories. And Esther is part of that historical event. the Persian king, Xerxes I, who is referred as Ahasuerus, he ruled in 486, between 486 and 465. During that time, Esther has come in. And geography, we need to note down 127 provinces from India. It's not exactly from full India as such. Indus Valley, we know about that. Those days it was very famous. The next picture will show you till Ethiopia, or northern part of Africa, there he was ruling. And God's providence is a main message, and in taking care of the Jews who are scattered all over these places. It's not one part of that rule. They were there, but in fact, in all the 127 provinces, the letters were sent. The Jews were there in every place. This map, I really happy to see this one. I sincerely thank Dave Arivel for bringing out this lovely map. I just told him that some map, Babylonian Empire or Persian Empire, he brought out very nicely. See, look at the right side. Indus River is going till there. They were ruling, and other side is Africa, till Africa. And Shushan is in the center. In the center, you can see that Susan is a capital for Persian kingdom. Next to Babylonia, they were there. So this is the geographical background of this book. We need to look at some of the customs and cultural background. It's very, very important to see wherever we involve in God's work. It's good to know the culture. And in this book, we need to raise some important questions. One of the things is understanding the culture. One thing is very clear, that they were people who are celebrating, who are having feast. And of late, we see that in many, many places, people have wanted to have banquets and go to extremes also. They want to have nightclubs, and they want to enjoy, they want to drink more. And weekends, they want to enjoy. All sorts of things are happening right now. Even in Persian time, it was there. Today, we are planning to look at first 2 chapters. There itself, there are 4 banquets are organized. The culture was very strong in celebrating, and naturally, drinking was part of it. I remember last summer when I went to Pune to speak to the staff in USA, Maharashtra. One young gentleman took me to go to this house, the staff worker's house. That was around 11:30 or no, even late, a little late night. I was surprised to see the streets filled with people, not marketing. They're all coming after the nightclubs. Even I was so surprised to see a young girl, a young lady going in a two-wheeler all alone in the midnight. I was really surprised. And that gentleman was telling, that young graduate was telling, Uncle, this is the culture, because on Friday evening, they want to enjoy. It's not only in one particular place. In many places, this is the way things are happening, and drinking habit is very bad. And another thing is, they believe in luck, and they looked at some of the days as lucky days. They wanted to choose some lucky days, numbers. It's very common even in our times. We see that some of them don't like 13, and some of them don't like particular day, like that. So even those days, that's a way they were giving importance to that one. One more point I just wanted to mention. In the political arena, it is not only one king was ruling. As we read in Esther chapter 7, in Persian kingdom, there are 7 princes. They formed the council of state. That means right now we see that both in the state level, in national level, we have councils of ministers. They help the prime minister or chief minister, and the bureaucrats were there. Why do I say this custom? In a political also, they were strong, very clear. As Sister Shirley prayed, God is working. And as we are going to look at the whole book later, we see that God has closed the eyes of some of this princes and king that we are going to ask a little later. God is in control. They think that they know everything, but God is overruling them, and God's sovereignty is there. I want you to know they are not a weak, structured people. They are very strong politically and even administrationally. They are very, very strong. The courier system, post system was very strong, because we read that all the 127 places, the information could reach very quickly. And by the way, I don't know whether you know that the Indian postal system, they started this courier. It was the brainchild of an EGF member. One USI member, John Samuel, is a person who developed the courier system in the Indian postal system. There were couriers, but post office had their own postal system. And as they were struggling, and this idea of speed post has come. And even in Persian time, we know that they were very strong. Hanging for the death penalty was very much there during that time. Festival is a part of any culture. We need to have a right understanding of festival. There are some people, they don't like festivals among the Christians. They feel that no need, because everything is devilish and festival is bad. In every bad things are happening in festivals. And some of us wanted to have festivals basically because others are celebrating. I also want to. For example, in Diwali, people are using crackers. So we need to have Christmas so that we can have crackers, not doing such things. Festivals, we need to take note of it, and Persians are very good in that. Even when we see that Jewish people in those days, they had a national deliverance day and 2 days, and that was known as a festival of Purim, that we'll be looking at in these days as we are going to study this book. Before we go into the book in detail, I wanted to raise these big questions. As Sister prayed rightly, the name of God is not at all there in this book. One more book is the Song of Solomon, where we don't have the name of God is mentioned. In that case, how come it is part of the Bible? Because as sisters prayed rightly, God is at work behind the scene. And there were discussions. Even the people who decided that canon, 39 books of Old Testament should be there. In AD 90, it was decided. That time also they had discussions, but later they decided that God is at work. Clearly, God is moving. It's something like in the chess game. I'm sure that most of you know the chess game. The coins will be moved, and ultimately, one person will say that check your king and finish. The game is over. And it won't happen just like that. It is a thoughtful move of coins. Then ultimately, one person is winning. So God won this test, and God moved the coins very clearly, though we don't read the name of God in this book. But we need to ask question, how come it is part of the Bible? And the appointment of a non-Persian person in important position, it's a questionable thing. Of course, immediately we can say that Nehemiah was there and Daniel was there. But think of Haman. How come he was not a Jew, and he was an Amalekian, and he was in power? And they had the princess, but one was not a princess. He was leading the influencing person in that place. One more big question is a Jewish lady marrying a non-Jew. That is not only a cultural question, it is a theological question, because they believe in one God. And how come they can marry people who are believing in many gods? So my dear brothers and sisters, not only here, even in Abraham looking for a daughter-in-law, it is not a caste. Hear me. There are some people think like that. They think that's important to marry a same caste person. Abraham was not looking for a caste. He was looking for a person who believes in God. And that's the reason he sent out his servant to look for the daughter-in-law who is a God-fearing person. And Jew cannot think of it. But here, consciously, Mordecai and Esther decided other way around. That's a big question. In the council, which met in AD 90, they raised this also as one of the questions. Is it okay to add like this? It's a bad, it should not have a bad influence in the church. But we need to think. I want you to ask these questions so that you can think. The height of the gallows prepared by Aman, in a very short time it was constructed, that big pole that is almost 75 feet, huge one, huge one. How come it was constructed in a very, very short time? That's a question we need to ask. Then festival, first 3 verses we read about 180 days. The banquet was, they were celebrating, and the 7-day big banquet was organized. At least the second part is okay. 7 days they can have banquets, but 180 days celebration of feast. How was it possible? And then practical implications in that. How come the king was not aware of the presence of Jews in his province when he and his officials took a very quick decision in accepting Haman's plot? Big questions, big questions. King was so smart, brilliant, but was he not aware that a group of powerful people are here? They are Jewish background. How come it has happened? And officials, there are 7 officials who are standing with king, but they took a quick decision when Haman brought to this plot that such and such day, on December 13th, all will be killed, all the Jews will be killed. And they agreed it. And then king has given his ring and said, I approve for this one. How come it has happened? Though it is a big question for us, for God, it is not at all a big question. God is there. Behind the scene, God is working. I thank God for sister's prayer. It's very true. Though we don't openly say this is God's doing, like God's name is not mentioned, but God is at work. Now, bring it to your own context. My dear student friends, in your college campus, in your university campus, something is happening. Big people are there, smart people are there. In your own state, in our own country, things are happening. We know that these people are very much aware of the Christian presence. These people are aware of righteous people. But how come they can take quick decisions like that? God is enthroned. God is sovereign. Remember that. Remember that. Sometimes we want to put God in a box. This is the way God should deal. This is the way God should act. But here we see that in the book of Esther, God is very active, though his name is not highlighted or mentioned. For this, I wanted you to think of these questions. Quickly, I want to have some character study of Esther. You can mention many. I'm sure that as you are reading and studying, you might have noticed many characters. I wanted to highlight this 10 points quickly. Some of them are very personal, but very important. An orphan. That's very moving for me. Normally, a person who has lost his mother or father, a young girl who has lost his parents, definitely she'll be under self-pity. Not only that, if you have lost some of your like people who are lost the relatives or grandparents or something like that, it's not only orphans, but even otherwise, there are people who are under stress. But look at this verse, Psalm 27, verse 10. Though my father and mother forsake me, the Lord will receive me. That is psalmist's experience. That is psalmist's affirmation. And here we see that Esther had a great character. And the way in which we read these 2 chapters, it's amazing to see that she was like that. And she was not having a self-pity. Otherwise, she could not manage like this. She was grown up with her uncle Mordecai. Why do I say that? In these days, many young ladies and definitely many young boys, they are not growing properly. They simply say that my parents are not there. I am growing in another house. No, not at all. Wherever you grow, you can have your character. I know that in our fellowship, there are many of our brothers and sisters, they don't have a good Christian background. Challenging. And some of them, they have to grow in their uncle's place, in their grandparents' house. There are many in our country, people think like that. They struggle a lot. Book of Esther is very important. I don't want to just jump into chapter 4 where she prayed and then she got a deliverance. That's a spiritual experience. Before that, socially, economically, morally, and emotionally, psychologically, in every aspect of it, how are you is so important. Don't just bring a spiritual conclusion of chapter 4. Very true, very true. Esther means chapter 4 verse 14 is important. But before that, there is a big character of Esther behind it. One more important point. We read that chapter 3 verse 7. She was, chapter 2 verse 7. She was lovely and beautiful. NIV, that's what it says. Esther chapter 2 verse 7. It says that Mordecai had a cousin named Hadassah, whom he had brought up because she had neither father nor mother. We have to use the word very unfortunate. She didn't have father and mother. But there was a mentor, or there was an uncle who was taking care of her. This young woman, who was also known as Esther, had a lovely figure and also beautiful. I'm reading from NIV. She had a lovely figure and was beautiful. Mordecai had taken her as his own daughter when her father and mother died. These days, lovely and beautiful, we give it to fair and lovely or to devilish. No, God has created you beautifully. If God has created you as handsome, don't think very bad about it. Don't leave it with the devil. Don't depend on fair and lovely. Depend on God. Lovely and beautiful is not only in the heart, it should be physical also. My dear brothers and sisters, somehow when we become a believer, we think that beautiful and handsome is very bad thing. Not at all, not at all. My dear young friends who are part of me in the Bible study, when you are at the college campus, if somebody says that you are beautiful, somebody says you are handsome, accept it. Praise God. Let me tell you other side. When you see a beautiful girl, don't be disturbed. Don't have temptation. Praise God. God has created her beautifully. When you see a handsome young man, rules. And she obeyed her uncle in every aspect of it. That's a lovely character. Humility and her life was definitely was very much under God's lovely thing. We note in chapter 2, she was a lovable person. Very important. Hear me properly. You may love people, but are you a lovable person? My sisters, definitely my brothers, very important. So we wanted to concentrate only on loving others. But remember that like Esther, like Daniel, and like people like them, they were very lovable persons. When they were in bondage, when they are in other person's land, people loved them, respected them. My dear brothers and sisters, being a child of God, you should be a lovable person. She believed in prayer very much, though Almighty God is not mentioned. God's name is mentioned, not mentioned. Jehovah is not mentioned. And we know that in those days, Almighty God is mentioned very, very much. Almighty Lord is mentioned, but nothing is mentioned. But she believed in the Almighty God. She prayed. Chapter 7, verse 6. She was straightforward. I like that. As a believer, you need to be straightforward. That verse, sorry, I'm not in a position to read because here the power cut. And that verse says, like you have to look at that verse. There, to the king, face to face, she says, this is the man. Haman is a man who wanted to get rid of the Jews. Then king was very unhappy. He was very angry. That's what we read in that verse. My dear brothers and sisters, if we were there in that position, we will say that you leave this place. I want to talk to my king, something. Then we will say that this man is a root cause for every problem. No, Esther was straightforward. She was bold. She was courageous. She had a guts to speak before face to face. Now, she was so shrewd in many, many ways. Though she was very humble and obey her uncle, in some places she has to behave shrewdly. She told him, I am going to fast. I am going to do this. And I like that last one. She was very proactive. She was not a machine. According to her own uncle's wishes, she was going. Earlier she went, very true. We need to be. That's what I highlighted in the previous points. But later, she was not simply depending on others. She has to be proactive. My young ladies who are part of this fellowship, don't simply depend on your father, then later your husband, and later your son. Some ladies think like that. I have only 3 people, my father, my husband, and my son. No, not at all. Esther is different. So my dear brothers and sisters, we need to make note of it. I don't have the character study of Mordecai, that you have to do it separately, because being in the book of Esther, you can note down many more points, but these are very precious points for me. We need to think very clearly. The broad outline of the book, Warren Wiersbe has this outline. First 2 chapters, Esther's coronation, how she went into the palace, and Haman's condemnation, how the way in which he came up and how he went down. Chapters 3 to 7, we can talk about it. And Israel's celebration is the last 3 chapters. One more commentator, I think that is NIV Study Bible. They have festivals, 3 festivals, or feast. Feast. The first feast is a king's feast, first 2 chapters. Then later we see that Esther's feast, then Israel's feast. Little differently they developed. But I like the other one. First 4 chapters talk about the threat to the Jews. The threat to the Jews, how it was there. The Queen of Esther was selected without knowing that she was a Jew. Then the plot was formulated that was there till 4th chapter. 5 to 10, the triumph of the Jews. We see how God is at work in that situation and how God did it. That we'll be looking at later. God willing, tomorrow we will be looking at other 2 chapters, chapter 3 and verse 4, chapter 4. Paragraphs, normally I like to study with paragraphs. It can have more paragraphs, but I want to have 7 paragraphs. The king selects Esther as his queen up to chapter 2 verse 20. And Haman plotted against Mordecai up to verse chapter 4. And Esther and Mordecai, how they planned in chapter 5, and how king honors Mordecai. That's a marvelous act of God. And the execution of Haman. God willing, Wednesday, we'll be studying these 3 chapters, 5, 6, and 7. And on Thursday, we'll be looking at the last 3 chapters. First 3 verses, there's a clear-cut shift from importance given. Short passages, chapter 8 and also in chapter 10, we see that how Mordecai is taken care, or how he became prominent. And God is there very much active. These paragraphs can talk about it. Brothers and sisters, when you look at Esther, as I said earlier, chapter 4 verse 14 cannot be missed. You can miss anything, but 14. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows, I like it, and who knows but that you have come to a royal position for such a time as this. You can underline many things. Let me start with the last one. Such a time as this. My dear brother and sister, it's not that you're going to be a king or you're going to be a queen, but in your own places, God wants to raise you to the power. But at such a time like this, when God is moving the coin, are you available to him? A royal position, it could be various things. The biggest thing is being the child of God, being in a spiritual position. It is a royal position, because in First Peter chapter 2 verse 9, we read, we become in the royal position. First Peter chapter 2 verse 9. God in his mercy takes us to the royal position as believers. Keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. And we cannot be silent. And when God is at work, you need to be humble, but be alert. Look around, see things. That's the reason in USI, we say that if you're brilliant, study well. Don't simply say that after my graduation, quickly I will go to Bible college and become a pastor or full-time worker. Because otherwise, I will fall into temptation. And if I do my post-graduation, I may lose my vision formation. We will say no. Even we'll say no. Being a mission-minded person, I will say no. If you can go up to PhD, don't think like that. The mission concern will grow like that. My brothers and sisters who are young, if we can do a better course in the days to come, if we can go up in a position, please, please work on it. If the Lord's coming is going to be delayed, you definitely, some of you have to be IAS officers. Some of you have to be in a real position where God can do mighty things through you. Don't be silent right now. And deliverance. It's not that you can do mighty things because you are an IAS officer, because you are in the high position. Not at all. It is God who is going to deliver people. It's God who is going to do. But the question is, are you available to be an instrument in God's hand. Esther was available in God's hand. So understand this passage properly, and it is not that you have to become a king or a queen, but definitely wherever you are, God wants to use you in a mighty way, in a right position, keeping you in the right position, blessing you in a wonderful way. Now let's hear a very small passage. I requested dear Soumya from Ongol to read this passage for us. I'm sure that she is ready. Chapter 2, verses 3. Soumya?
Yes, uncle.
Yes,
Praise the Lord.
you can read.
Excellent. This evening, the scripture is from the book of Esther, chapter 2, verses 15 to 20, which is as follows. When the turn came for Esther, the young woman Mordecai had adopted, the daughter of his uncle Abihail, to go to the king, she asked for nothing other than what Haggai, the king's eunuch, who was in charge of the harem, suggested. And Esther won the favor of everyone who saw her. She was taken to King Xerxes in the royal residence in the 10th month, the month of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. Now the king was attracted to Esther more than to any of the other women, and she won his favor and approval more than any of the other virgins. So he set a royal crown on her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. And the king gave a great banquet, Esther's banquet, for all his nobles and officials. He proclaimed a holiday throughout the provinces and distributed gifts with the royal liberality. When the virgins were assembled a second time, Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate, but Esther had kept secret her family background and nationality, just as Mordecai had told her to do, for she continued to follow Mordecai's instructions as she had done when he was bringing her up. Here ends the reading. May God bless these few words in his hearing. Amen.
Thank you so much, Soumya. You are gifted in reading God's word. Thank you. We see that God's hand is behind everything, and God is enthroned, and God is in control, and God will rule and overrule situations. Normally, we think of God's rule, but remember, God is overruling situations. First 9 verses, we see that the king was celebrating, and he was in the high feast, the mood, drinking, and all sorts of evil will continue if this mindset is there. Be careful. I am not against celebrations. I am not against feasts, but we need to be doubly careful. Job, the man, God looked at him, a just, a morally pure person. When his children enjoy their birthdays, when his children are celebrating, he said, I need to be careful that they may be doing something wrong, which is not pleasing to the Lord. And he was sacrificing. That's what we read. He was such a noble character. So definitely Job was not saying that you don't celebrate. Have feasts, celebrate, enjoy, but be careful. Know the limits. And the second part is very important. In his heat, he divorces his queen. Here we need to stop and ask whether what she did is right. Definitely right. She doesn't want to show her beauty before these drunkard fellows. They may be officers, they may be great. Even when her husband wanted her to come, that's the way Bible says, want to show her beauty. My brothers and sisters, hear me. Just before this previous slide, I told you that Esther was lovely and beautiful. But your lovely and beautiful should not be misused And what Vasti did, it's a tremendous moral and guts to say no to that one. And these wise men discussed together and gave a suggestion to the king: if you are not going to take action to this queen, all these women in our countries, right? That's the way they decided, and they removed. That is a very separate point for discussion. But one thing is very clear: God hand was there. Vasti has to go, and Queen Esther has to be the position. Chapter 4, verse 14. God has to take care of moving. Mordecai was in the right position. He knew what's happening there. When we see that Mordecai was sitting there, it is not like something like a beggar. Just very near to the king's palace, he was sitting, and like a beggar or a cranky man, he was sitting. No, not at all. He was a smart man, because tomorrow, God willing, we'll be starting from there only. Chapter 2, verse last paragraph, it says, Mordecai found out the plot and informed the king that somebody wanted to kill you. As I was reading, I was just thinking of our former Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. It's unfortunate there was not Mordecai sitting in that place. And that's what exactly happened. So Mordecai was sitting in a very crucial place when people are plotting and planning and executing. And there he moved the coin. God's hand was behind him, that he could bring his niece to that position. And he has to take a hard decision. And but he moved the coin according to the plan of God. In her preparation in palace, it's another important factor I wanted to talk to you. Daniel was there in that position, but under the different king. That's a Babylonian king. And definitely, being a Jew, Esther, Daniel, people like them, they all left their places with a good background. They came to this position. But yeah, Daniel took a decision to not to defile himself with the royal food and wine. And he asked the chief official for permission not to defile himself with his food. But here we read Esther is different, not like Daniel. As she was under the preparation to go and stand before the king, she took that food. That's one important point I wanted to tell you. It is not that Esther was compromising. You should not say that men are strong and women are weak. No, not at all, not at all. And we should not say that her spiritual commitment is less compared to Daniel. I don't think so. I don't think so. Be careful. Don't be judgmental. Because I come out with one more verse, as Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 31. Whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it all for the glory of God. That is the counsel of Paul to the very bad church, Corinthian church. Later, when we are going to study the book of 1 Corinthians, we are going to see that one of the tough letters Paul has to write to the worst church, the Corinthian church. And to the believers there, he says, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it all for the glory of God. Daniel was not drinking or taking that royal food for the glory of God. But here I would say, for the purpose of God, for the hand of God was behind bringing Esther, and she didn't have any fuss as such. Whenever it was needed, she took a stand. She fasted and prayed, and she took all her assistants to pray with her. She made a big impact. But here, she was not a typical fasting and praying lady. I'm going to fast and pray. If the king is happy with me, I will go. Not like that. Sometimes evangelicals, we may tend to think that Esther should have fasted and prayed and Mordecai should have fasted and prayed. If it is God's will, I'll become a queen. I'm not against fasting and prayer. As I said earlier, she believed in fasting and prayer. She believed in corporate prayer. She believed in raising prayer support from her own group. But here, she did little differently. That's what I wanted to say. For the glory of God, don't have compromise, don't have less commitment, but be careful, be thoughtful. Standing before the king, and you need to have a self-esteem. And it's not that as many women are going to stand there, you need to have a real pleasing thing. King was pleased. That's what Soumya has just now read for us. And king was attracted to Esther more than to any of the other women, and won his favor and approval more than any of the other virgins. So he set a royal crown on her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. My brothers and sisters, when we stand before the officials, when you stand before the principal, when you stand before the people have to take decisions, you need to have a right attitude. I know that I'm talking to many of my young brothers and sisters. It is not a marriage proposal I'm talking about. That's very unfortunate. Some of the girls have to stand before the boys, whether they will choose or not. That's a very bad custom we have. Okay, I'm not talking about that one. When you're standing before the officials and things like that, you need to have a right, proper self-esteem. By the way, I want to stop here. And gentlemen, if you're choosing a partner, don't do like that. Don't simply quote, I want to be like this king. I will ask many girls to come before me and I will choose who is a beautiful lady. That's extremely bad. Don't quote the passage for your convenience. That's very, very bad. I feel extremely sorry for my sisters who have lost their self-esteem because they have to send biodata to many young men, and many will interview them, and simply they will reject, you are not tall, you don't have a long hair, you are not, you have spectacles, all not God's will. Very bad, very bad. I warn you, my young brothers. Okay, that's a different story. But here, Esther had a pleasing way of handling things. One more point before we close the second chapter, we see that the ministry or the effect of Mordecai, how God's hand was upon him when he was found out the plot. And look at the obedient girl who was not at all telling king and others about the background. She has to be very thoughtful. That's what I said. She was so shrewd and smart. When this came, verse 22, but Mordecai found out about the plot and told Queen Esther, who in turn reported to the king, giving credit to Mordecai. Very smart, very smart. She was not looking for the in a reason. In chapter 6, when you're going to study, we see that day after tomorrow. This incident changed the history. God's hand was upon the people. So my dear brothers and sisters, we need to be very, very shrewd. The shrewdness comes from God's Spirit. Allow God's Spirit to work in you and humble yourself. Don't be very smart in managing situations. Don't be diplomatic. That's the way we use this word in the political areas. Even in the churches, some of them wanted to be very diplomatically do things. But I want you to be thoughtful about God's hand in behind everything. So when we look at Daniel 1:8, and later as we looked at 1 Corinthians chapter 10, we know that whatever we do, we need to do for the glory of God. Not our ulterior motive is for our own self-glory or to catch that seat. Some of us behave like that. We wanted to say in the name of God, in the will of God, and even for the glory of God. But our eyes are in the seat. We wanted to go to the seat. I need to be the general secretary. I need to be the bishop. I need to be this and that. I want to be like that. So we want to think of that seat, and we use glory of God and will of God. No, no, that is selfish. God knows your heart. God knows your heart. Please hear me. And before we come into the personal reflection time, I wanted to tell you that the timeline slides are made. I sincerely thank Vadivel for adding this one, because I was struggling, and he helped me a lot to look at the Babylonian and Persian empires, how they came, and the time of Esther is highlighted here. And even before that, the prophetical books, how they prophesied about the exile and what has happened to the exile, and where is Ezra, and where is Esther and Nehemiah. And later, Malachi comes as a last prophetical book as such. So I sincerely thank Vadivel for bringing this timeline chart. You can work on it. I'm not taking time to explain it more, but you can see that Esther's time in 486, and in 486, the king became prominent, and 83, she became the queen. The Esther story starts in BC 483. With that, we will close today's study. We are going to study the book, other 8 chapters in the 3 days' time. 3 questions for our personal reflection. First one, where was God in your life? If you consider as something like a chess game of your life, how the Lord has moved your coins thus far. Look at your failures, not only in successes. Even during your failures, how God did it. We hear stories. In +2, I expected 99%, but it was not there. Otherwise, I would have gone to medical college. God moved that coin like that. There are many stories like that. Even in your failures, God's coin was there in moving you. Second question is very important, not only for sisters, even to brothers. Am I composed or cool or like very quiet, like Esther, when I was undergoing being an orphan, being a person who is taken care of by uncle, being a person, though I'm beautiful because in the streets people are looking at me very differently, all sorts of things are there, but she was so composed. So look at the character of Esther, not only as a queen. Before that, she underwent a strong negative things, but she was composed. If you are not composed, my young ladies and gents, why not? Why not? Now, if you are composed, definitely God can do mighty things in future. I want you to look at that in 2 chapters. That's what I really wanted you to concentrate. One more thing is, we didn't have time to look at the lessons we can learn from Mordecai. Not only for gents, even ladies have to think of it. May the Lord help each one of us to take this message seriously, so that as we proceed further in studying this book, it will be a great blessing for our life and definitely for our ministry. Let's pray together. Father, we thank you for this lovely book. Though your name is not mentioned, we know that your hand is clearly was there. In every move of these passages, we see that your hand was there. And as we look at our own life, as we look at our own family, As we look at our own future, as we look at our own ministry, Lord, we know that your hand is there. Especially when we look at our nation as a whole, when we look at our own states, and when we look at our own districts, we know that you are there. You are there. The God of Esther is there. The God of Mordecai is there. With that great confidence, we close this study. And as we are going to look at all the other 8 chapters, minister to us, O God, through your word. Thank you for hearing us. In Jesus' precious name, we humbly pray. Amen. Thank you.